Welcome to The Real Life Buyer. Whether you are buying for yourself or your business, here you will find tips, techniques and knowledge to support your journey to buying smart. Interviewing business owners and technical experts to give you information and guidance before parting with your money. Save money, time and get what you want when you want it. Now introducing The Real Life Buyer, Dave Barr.
Hello and welcome to The Real Life Buyer. In this episode, I'm delighted and excited to introduce you to Rebecca Bull, the founder and owner of My HR Hub based in Nottingham. Rebecca is a respected former colleague and has been a valued friend that I've stayed in touch with and followed her journey for many years. We worked together for well over a decade ago, and her support and guidance as an HR professional was and remains second to none. Rebecca took the bold move to leave the employed corporate world and set up her own HR consultancy some time ago, and has since taken the industry by storm, and in doing so has earned a number of business awards. Rebecca is a highly qualified and is a chartered fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personal Development, quite a mouthful there. She has a ceaseless drive and energy to help people and support small businesses to develop and grow their employees, thus enabling the business to scale up and succeed. If your business wishes to move to the next level with the right people, then look no further. Hello, Rebecca, and welcome to my show.
Hi, Dave. Oh, it's great to be on your show. So thank you so much for asking me to be part of this. It's very exciting.
Okay, hopefully, hope we'll have some fun as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Well, perhaps you could spend just a few minutes telling the listeners about yourself and your background.
Sure, thank you. So I guess after graduating from Nottingham Trent Business School in Business, HR and German Masters, I worked then across a number of global companies and household names such as Games Workshop, Convergys, which is a US business, Speedo International, and lots of family-owned businesses and SMEs and startups before starting my own business. So my HR Hub was launched in May 2016 and is very, very happily to say now, after a lot of hard work, is a multi-award-winning HR consultancy for startup, small and fast growth businesses. And so we work with clients across the UK and not just the Midlands now, and also some overseas too. And I guess in essence, the business, we're committed to providing HR and business support for startups, small and growing, fast-growing businesses through developing our own personal values, which is being creative, being passionate, and making a difference to them.
Okay, you mentioned some awards. Can you tell us a little bit more about the awards?
Yeah, so it was really fantastic, really. So we've won quite a few awards over the last 4 years, and certainly the most important one for me was the East Midlands Nottingham Evening Post Women in Business, I believe the title was. It was the Sole Trader of 2018-19, and I guess the reason for me why that was so important is because when you put so much hard work and effort and passion and drive into creating solutions that don't exist for small businesses, and certainly didn't then 4 years ago, it was the first HR model of its kind in the UK, you feel as though you're just campaigning on your own for small businesses. So whilst you're a sole trader, which has changed sort of since then, I do have more support now. But initially you are working flat out to try and make a difference, to try and bring creative, cost-effective solutions and products and services to the small business sector, which previously was just enjoyed by the corporates because they could afford it. And so the model for me was working with those suppliers that I'd worked with for many years that were tried and tested and were very well established in terms of partnering with me and how I want to work, to approach them to say, actually, I wanted to create a different business model, and I'd like to for you to consider me almost as a corporate business in terms of buying power, to allow me to then become the go-between between them and my small businesses, as and when they grow and develop. And I didn't know that at the time before launching the business, how things were going to go. And so we agreed lots of very attractive corporate rates for their products and services, and they were very pleased to help because they know how I work and how passionate I am to enable businesses to work as best they can. And through working with my partners, we've created a model which has been pleasingly well accepted across the SME market. And I guess over time that enabled me to grow the business from just 3 clients to start through to working with over 40 businesses now across the UK. And as a result of that growth, the award was given to my HR hub, predominantly based on the growth of the business from the client base. I guess also from the growth in terms of the brand and the recognition of the brand, and also the difference we're making in the SME sectors.
Okay, you mentioned a number of services in that. What are the main services that you offer your clients?
Yeah, so we're really passionate about helping the growth of startups. So that could be a one-man band wanting the first contract and handbook, through to our largest client is about 350 staff. We don't have a cap on how many we work with in terms of headcount. The concept changes, the service changes as the business grows. And having done probably previously about 15 startups starting way back at Games Workshop, we almost know and can predict what's coming over the hill for them. So we can actually set the infrastructure up in preparation and be proactive about what's coming in terms of, is that employee relations issues, is that structure they need, is that more sort of support around creating more solid teams as opposed to dysfunctional teams. So the use of psychometrics, for example, for that. But then also cloud-based HR software we use as a core of our service. So that enables us to work remotely and access client data very swiftly, which applies a real cost saving to clients because we don't have to go on site and dig out files from the dusty sort of grey cupboard in the corner. We can have everything within the software system which we set up for them. And the last 2 years, we've been very pleased to say we've won both awards both years for the fastest growing HR consultancy in terms of using that Breathe HR software system. So in addition to that, the model is just very generalist. It's how I always worked previously in the corporate world. So I knew that's what businesses needed. So it's not just your contracts and your handbooks and your disciplinaries and your advice. It's everything around creating a one-stop shop for HR advice or consultancy, recruitment as well. So we work and recruit for our clients. So we're not a recruitment consultancy. We don't apply the same percentages in terms of the cost, which is mostly unaffordable for small businesses. So that's based on a time costing. And we either recruit for them and do the whole outsourced process, or we train them how to do it themselves. So we enable them to develop and use their own skills in terms of their HR needs, or they can outsource that to us, or we can have a hybrid depending on what they feel confident with. We also provide a lot of services around health and wellbeing, and always have done for 20 years now. I think the first employee assistance program I brought in was at Games Workshop, probably about 20 years ago, and have been an advocate of that since. So mental health wasn't even a word then when we were doing that, but obviously over the time it has become much more prevalent. So health and wellbeing, employee assistance programs, counselling, occupational health is something we do, and it's very core to our business in terms of how we want to provide support for employees. We also cover reward, so we partner with some great companies that offer discounted high street shopping. We look after pensions for clients, life assurance, and we also provide training. So we train managers or employees or business owners in a range of probably over 50 different workshops, covering how to manage flexible working requests, to unconscious bias in recruitment, to furlough, employment law, to how to motivate your teams. So everything you could ever want to know in terms of becoming a better people manager, we offer that too. Obviously the HR software system I've spoke about as well, and we also offer an employee engagement survey, which is not an online survey. This is all face-to-face, because I feel we get the better value and the more information from face-to-face engagement, and that actually creates over time into a really nice business improvement plan. So from that we can really open the bonnet, open the car bonnet, and really do a deep dive into what needs to be fixed in the business, rather than taking our brief from a management team, which sometimes are right, but in some cases they are well far away from what employees need. So we go and talk to staff. We want to engage with their teams, and we want to feel that the teams can come to us if they've got issues. So it's very much your a personalised, on-site, proactive HR service that we provide, and we do lots of other things. We do referencing, we do networking. We do a lot of cross-pollination across our clients to create that community of helping each other. So I think there's probably about 20 different sectors that we work across. So we have, for example, it may be a client that says, well, I'm just starting out, I need a website. So we've got 3-4 clients that are website designers, so we can refer onwards. And it's just nice to be able to provide the additional support beyond HR and training and recruitment engagement, into supporting clients through people that we know in our network that are very good at what they do. So that could be a tax advisor, could be an insurance broker, it could be a business coach. So we have our kind of special black book of people who are tried and tested and really get small businesses.
Right, that's amazing. It's amazing.
Constantly evolving. Yeah, we last year we created another business called My HR Club, which is kind of a watered down version of the hub, which is all online. So we have a portal with over 150 documents. We have Zoom sessions every week, covering everything from employment law to training to helping people in a standalone HR role, because it's very challenging. So this is predominantly for those in HR looking after people, so not necessarily clients. It's say your office manager, your PA, your MD, newly qualified HR manager that just needs a community, a place to go to get some support, to download instant resources, to be up to date with all the latest employment law. And we have some nice little treats in there as well, including an annual retreat in Derbyshire, which is 3 days, 2 nights, completely relaxing, totally pampered, because we recognise that those working in HR absolutely do need to look after themselves as well, which is normally the case, that they are so people focused and trying to fix all of the issues that are coming. They tend to not look after themselves. So that's a very low cost service, and we are pushing that out and have pushed it out to quite a few charities because of its low cost, but also the fact they can access lots of information that is going to be helpful to them, because all businesses need that. And we don't want financial pressures to be a blocker to get that information. And my HR Club was, for me, it was what I needed for 20 years and I didn't have. And so I created it on a bit of a heart-based pursuit, really, as opposed to a commercial pipeline. It was more this is something I wanted, and I know there's so many people out there that need this too. So that's quite a nice service, which has probably in the last 3 months actually come into its own through COVID, because of the remoteness of the service. It's kind of really started to kind of move forwards. So sorry, Dave, that was an awful lot of information, but we do.
Well,
we do
it's
offer a lot of
tremendous. You know, the
services.
amount of sort of strength and depth that you have in the service you're providing and the passion that is behind it. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I can fully understand why certainly somebody, as you say, from the humble single employee through to somebody with 350 can see the benefits of engaging with that. Just thinking about
Yeah.
those poor old new starters in life, there's the challenge of creating and growing a business obviously is extremely hard work. And with that usually comes the challenge of employing and managing people, of which obviously some people are just not used to doing. How would you say a business owner or a buyer for a business owner go about preparing for and seeking out an outside HR service such as yourself? What sort of things should they be looking for, and what questions should they ask?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think when I started to create the model, which took me probably 9 months of preparation before I launched the business, I was really clear about what type of model I wanted to offer. I was really clear about what that should look like, and it wasn't set out to be any different than anybody else, because in all fairness, I didn't look at competitors at the time, because that wasn't important to me. I wasn't interested in what competitors were doing. I was interested in what I wanted to offer. And so there could have been somebody 10 minutes down the road with exactly the same model, but that wouldn't have mattered to me, because that was the model that, you know, I knew I wanted to work with. And so I guess the hub model is unique in that sense. There are more businesses now doing kind of the blended pick and mix, etc. And that's fine. So it depends what you're trying to compare it to. So there are the larger organizations who can offer the service where you can call anytime and they can give you a stock answer, and they can provide you templates and all you can eat documentation. But in my experience of speaking to clients who want to come out of those types of contracts, which they generally do lock you in between 2 and 3 years, is that they have limited options when you are in a position where you've got a problem. And so with a reactive service like that, they do run out of options towards the end, because the work's already been done, or the damage has been done in a conversation, or the process or the procedure they should have followed as an employer wasn't followed. And so it is about damage limitation at that stage. Whereas if you're working with a consultancy in a more hand-holding kind of scenario, which my HR hub is, and other small consultancies generally tend to be, where you get to know the business, you understand the culture, you get to know the employees, for example. With most of my clients, I have privileged information in terms of sharing their board packs and looking at their plans for the future. And so we work strategically. So I'm able to steer them in the right direction, because I get that kind of line of sight for that. And so that allows me to kind of deliver, or probably also other smaller consultancies that work in that way, allows you to deliver a more value add service, which is more personable and is just more aligned to the flexes and the rapid change and the agility that you need to apply to small businesses, as we've seen in the last 3 months. And so I think it really depends what you like. If you feel you just want somebody there at the end of the phone just to call and get documents as and when, that's completely fine. Or if you want to partner with somebody that genuinely will get under the skin of your company and really feel like they're an extension of your team, then that's probably where you should go to more smaller consultancies. And I think again, what I definitely wanted to do differently was not tie companies in. And so we don't have any contracts that tie clients in at all. Because I'm a great believer, if people want to walk away from something, they should have the ability to do that. You shouldn't be locked in by, well, no, you can't leave for another 2 years, because that's what generally happens. And I think that suppression is not a great thing for building a long-lasting relationship, partnership with a business. And so we offer no tie-in, but just a 3-month notice period. So if we're on a retainer, we would just like 3 months notice that if you don't need our work and our support in 3 months' time, that's fine, but please give us a courtesy to try and replace that service and that cost with somebody else, and that gives us time to kind of do that work. So I think be very wary about having conversations, and I have heard this, which is, it doesn't feel fair at all, but small businesses are having conversations with the larger consultancies. Perhaps they're getting notified from the company's house or wherever they get their data. They have a sales team that make that call and almost shock the small business into signing into a contract for 2-3 years, on the basis that if you don't have this, if you don't have that, if you don't have liability insurance, if you don't have this contract, if you don't have these policies, there's a sure way straight into a tribunal. And small companies do just want to tick the box, and they're signed up, and before you know it, they're signed up to a passive service which is costing quite a lot of money, in some cases £200-300 a month for a passive service. And so I would really encourage small businesses, if you get that phone call, make sure you look locally, look on LinkedIn, get referrals from other companies that are larger than yours, and find out who they're working with and get recommendations. And I think recommendations is the only way to go with such a very important service, which is enabling your business to grow, but also making sure you are looking after your employees as best that you can.
Right, that's excellent. I fully understand that. It sounds like some other people perhaps focus on the fears of not having the support service in place rather than the positives that you clearly offer.
Yeah, and I think probably, and I was having this conversation with somebody recently, the journey I've been on as a HR professional, having worked for such amazing businesses, so Games Workshop being the first one for many years, shaped my perception of what HR should be like. And that is about employees and treating them well and engaging with them and rewarding them and training them, and doing all the great things you can with employees and seeing them reach their potentials. And that was a fantastic journey to be on. And had I been probably in the public sector, probably doing an employee relations role day in, day out, my shape of HR, my perception of HR may be very different. But I think for me, in terms of how and what works for me, the type of HR is only ever about people and development and motivation and engagement. And yes, of course, the disciplinary and grievances, they come with that territory, and we do those, but it's not the prime focus of our role. Our focus of the role is to help businesses grow using really great people tactics and products and services to motivate and get the best out of people. That ultimately has an impact on bottom line.
Absolutely. So just thinking now that perhaps somebody has gone and done some research, found a few companies they feel comfortable with. How would you recommend that that individual then engages with those HR consultancies to make sure there's the right fit for their business, or how they want the business culture to become?
Well, that's quite a loaded question, Dave, I have to say.
It's not meant to be easy,
No, gosh. Okay, right. I guess I would probably go to values first. and I see more and more and more employees or candidates in the recruitment process being attracted to companies because of their values on their websites. Now, we know that can be smoke and mirrors, so it's going beyond that. And actually in the interview process, asking, for example, in the candidate interview process, the candidate would ask the company, can you show me and explain and evidence how these fantastic values play out in your culture? You know, how does that actually work in practice? Because there are a lot of companies, I think less now because they know they shouldn't be doing it, actually making sure their culture aligns to their values and vice versa. And in most cases, a lot of companies just don't have values on the website anymore because it's just by default, this is who we are. And I think the same goes for consultancies. So small businesses looking to engage with a HR consultant should be looking at the values, and are the values aligned? And there have been points in times when we've walked away from clients because the type of work they wanted us to do and how they wanted us to do it, and it wasn't something I wanted to put my name to. It wasn't something that made me particularly happy. It wasn't something I wanted my business to be known for, to practicing HR in that type of way. So it was quite a powerful moment and quite a scary moment, I think, for me, when I actually felt kind of strong enough to walk away from a company that I didn't want to work with. So I think values are just so important. I guess in addition to that, I would probably look at how the consultant that you're interested in, the consultancy, engages with other clients. So often, and more often, and I prefer this to be like this, clients will, or potential clients will engage and we'll go through how we work, etc. And we've got a range of testimonials now. We send them, plus the awards and the various kind of growth statistics, etc. And even at that point, they'll say, we want to speak to one of your clients or two of your clients. We want to see how that actually has worked in practice. And I am more than happy to do that. I think it's a really good thing that they are making sure I'm the right person for them, and at the same time that they're right for us. So I think it is a little bit of a dual choice and a partnership that has to work for both parties. But then I would also say look at sector experience. So depending what sector you are, there are some consultancies that just will specialise, let's say, in dentistry or construction, or hospitality or healthcare. And if you're a world away from that sector, just don't do that, because HR is so bespoke depending on sector. And we've been very lucky in that we've had so much experience in many sectors through the types of companies we've worked for before. And we can then say, actually, we are, I would say, specialists in these areas, which opens the doors for us to work in, quite a few different industries, which is fantastic. But I know certainly through COVID, I know there are other HR consultants that worked purely for construction and dentists and healthcare, where healthcare boomed and the other two slightly went over a cliff. So I think match wherever you can the industry experience with somebody who's got industry experience as well.
Yeah, I think that's really refreshing to hear some of those comments about you select your customer as well, and you want to make sure the values are in alignment with your own. I think that's absolutely wonderful to hear. Thinking about culture, because I think certainly from our history, we've go to understand how important the culture of the company is and to the people. It's very difficult for somebody to explain culture in words, certainly to document it. So how would you suggest a business owner go about explaining or demonstrating to you the culture they're looking for or have and hoping to develop more?
Well, I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that question, Dave, but but I'm happy to answer it in the best way that I can. So culture is, I think there's a quote that's, it's what everyone does when no one's looking. There's many quotes around culture. And when I work with clients, certainly through the employee engagement project, one of the questions before I start the project is, please tell me about your culture, explain your culture to me. And they get stuck every single time. They can't produce the words to describe how it is to work for that business. And if they do produce some words, it's probably a world away from what it actually really is.
Yeah.
And I think it's very hard for a leader to kind of decipher what culture is that they want to have from what they think it is versus what it actually is. And I think they have limited control on what that culture will become over time, because culture develops over time with employees, and there's so many various levers that have to be pulled to kind of not create, because you don't create a culture, it just evolves over time. It's not something you get a textbook off the, which so many people think you can. You put a table tennis and then you put a cool little beer bar in there, and then you let everybody have pizza on Friday, and all of a sudden we're a cool culture and we have teamwork, and but it's not as easy as that. And the way we work with our clients is we propose that the employee engagement survey, one of the questions in that is describe the culture. And so employees then tell me what the culture is, what they think it is. And we then position that back to the leadership team and say, this is what your staff think, because that's the most important thing. It's almost, it kind of irrelevant what you think it is, because you're not living and breathing it really. You're probably not, at the coalface and engaging with lots of different teams, etc. And you just get snapshots across the business, but actually at the coalface, this is what people are saying. And that's a really interesting conversation, because it generally then is something that's quite authentic that you can work with. And then what we do then, we decipher that and try and put together some core words that have the authentic meaning of what that environment is like to work in. And it might just be the environment. It may not necessarily be the culture. It might just be the environment at this stage. And that's what they almost say, well, this is what we are. This is how we're going to work. And this is what we're going to show on our website. And this is how we're going to recruit and tell people when they ask us what our culture, how's our culture and how do we work. We can then say, well, our employees say this, as opposed to the messages of what the MD wants it to be. And I think that's powerful, where you actually ask your staff, ask your staff what the culture is. They'll tell you, and use that as almost like a process to engage the right candidates, to bring the right candidates into that environment.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. We're thinking about priorities. So you may have businesses, obviously, that are fairly new, and they need to establish HR systems, procedures and policies, etc. Where would you say the priorities should lie when you're setting things up?
Okay, it's a good question. Stripping it right back, the HR audit for me is a thing of the past. It's just getting policies out, ticking boxes, because in most instances, employment law is so fast moving, they probably don't dovetail with the contracts, and they don't dovetail with the training that the managers are given and how to practice in that area. They probably don't dovetail with the handbook, doesn't dovetail with how the employees are working within policies that apply to them at work. So generally the HR audit for me is not something I want to spend time on and charge the client for. So it's stripping it right the way back. And we start with in an ideal world, we would implement the HR software system, which then becomes the cloud-based, the HR compliance piece. It has everything from emergency contacts to right to work in the UK documentation, contracts, handbooks for the employee themselves. But it's also self-serve, so they can book their own holidays, it can track annual leave, it can support training development, log all training development. And the one that we work to, which is core to our services, has things like suggestion schemes in there, and kudos, which is a nice way to kind of share kind of high fives across peer groups, etc. And so all of our products and services are built around this system. We can then, from that, go and create a contract of employment, which is a key thing. So this year, obviously, COVID has slightly hijacked employment law for this year. But in April of 2020, there was quite a lot of new legislation that came out, including the Good Work Plan and new legislation around employment contracts, which most employers have missed because there was more important things to do, obviously. And so for that reason, we'll go back to basics. We'll make sure there's a contract in place that's compliant, and then our bread and butter, which we always said should be compulsory, is the handbook. And so many companies, small businesses say, oh no, we're not going to do the handbook, we're not going to spend money on that because we don't have to do it. And actually what they should be thinking is more 80% of that handbook they have to be doing because it's statutory law. And there's probably 20% which is more localised on what time you have lunch and what uniform you wear and holidays and bits and bobs. But essentially 80% of that handbook is how you should be running your business and how you should be training your managers and how your employees should be working to rule, etc. So contract, so HR software system, contract, handbook, and the obviously next crucial one for me, which again should be compulsory in my book, is the job description. So job description is absolutely critical. So that works through the whole employee life cycle, from scoping the role to advertising the role, to interviewing for the role, to working through the probation, induction period, and then working through into performance management and development conversations, and then ultimately into redundancy. You know, at every stage, the job description is a critical tool. And again, because it's not compulsory, so many companies say, oh no, it's fine, we don't need one, or we've just got something on the back of a beer map, that's fine. And so lots of clients have issues mainly through lack of clarity of role and who's doing what, etc. So that creates so many problems. So job description, definitely. New starter information, obviously for your payroll, etc. And then a comprehensive induction on day one, not week 3, day one, welcoming them and making sure they've got everything they need at the desk, the kit's set up, the desk is there, everyone knows they're coming, they're clear of what they're doing from day one in terms of training and orientation, and kind of really making sure you're having structured one-to-ones with them every week for the first 3 months, which is critical. So they would probably be my top 4 or 5.
Brilliant, really good. Thinking a little bit more about the formalities, if you are getting into an agreement with a consultancy, what would you say the key aspects you think should be included and clear in that agreement?
Yeah, sure. So if I think about what we have 2 agreements. So the first agreement is the consultancy agreement, which confirms that we are a registered business, confirms we, where we're registered, our company registration number, where we're based, for example, who would then be performing the service, who would actually be delivering that service. And then also there's obviously all the legal kind of terminology that comes into that in terms of various standard terms, which I won't go into right now. There's somebody more qualified to talk about the kind of the legal contractual terms, but they're quite standard templates that you can get from a solicitor's, for example. And more the statement of terms would be around what has been agreed in terms of the work. So make sure the schedule of work is really clear. And so it breaks it down probably into different stages. If it is an ongoing project, or if it's a one-off project, be clear what that is and when that will be delivered by. And if it's an ongoing project, be clear also about the different stage gates and the different dates for those deliveries. And clearly, obviously, along with that, the costings have to be aligned. And I guess if there's any deviation to what has been agreed that's beyond scope, then there should be a conversation with that before it goes offline, so there are no surprises after when the invoice comes through. And the second agreement that we send through, which all consultancies should do, is the GDPR agreements. And so this is literally the assurance on how the data is protected and who has access to that data, and any questions they may have at any time where they can go to access any information.
Okay. Just thinking, is there any particular KPIs or metrics that help somebody to establish how things are going? You mentioned about the stages. Are they gut feelings, or is it something that can be measured?
I think depends on what clients want and what they're looking for. So if it's a handbook, for example, if it's a contract, then that's quite tangible in terms of it will be delivered on X date, and these are the policies we will have within those. So that's quite tangible. If, for example, it's something more complex, let's say an employee engagement survey, then the KPIs will be then created as part of that program, but these will be employee engagement KPIs that belong to the business. So you could have, from this project that we do, we create leaderboards in terms of, let's say, percentages. So one question would be, are you proud to work here? Yes, no. And we'll, let's say, get 80% yes, 20% no. The 20% who are no, because it's a one-to-one meeting, we want to know why, as opposed to an online survey where you don't really get to find out who actually said that in the first place. And so our delivery with clients, the beyond sort of post engagement, once we have the results in, we then focus on our recommendations if they want us to continue to work with them on a retainer, which normally is always generally happens, is post the recommendations, we then get to work on those. And so the following year, 18 months later is about the right time to go and do another pulse check on that survey, for example. And what we would want to see then is that the engagement is a lot higher. And so, for example, we've got 90% or 95% telling us that they are proud to work for that business. Okay, so that's a slightly different way of measuring, I would say, the effectiveness of projects, and through the engagement of making it transparent across the business to know that there is continuous improvement in place and that they can all sort of contribute. And I guess another way for us, because customer service to us is first and foremost probably our first trait, customer service is hugely important to us. Every year we do a continuous improvement survey with our clients, and that is all about them being honest with us. Would they recommend us further? Are they happy? What else can we be providing? Which service or product has had the most impact this year? Is there anything else we can do for them right now? So I think look for those consultancies that will constantly hold themselves to account and constantly want to improve their products and services and evolve. Every business has to evolve, and you need to be partnered with a company that is constantly evolving and sourcing new products and innovations that are there as a a choice for you to have if you wanted them.
Really good, really good. We mentioned COVID-19 a few times now. Obviously, this is unusual for most people to deal with, and I guess it's significantly affected your customers. I assume at times like this, the importance of HR, professional HR support really comes into its own. So where has your business seen the most significant aspects of this, and how have you managed to help your clients during this time?
Yeah, crikey, it's been an absolute whirlwind, hasn't it, for everybody? So I think from a personal point of view, we have family in Europe, and so we knew COVID was coming to the UK. And so prior to lockdown, I was locked down 2 weeks before the official lockdown. And so that gave me time to mentally prepare what I was hoping wasn't going to come to the UK. But from what was happening over it, certainly in France and Spain and Germany and Switzerland, where we have family and friends, we kind of knew we probably were going to get this at some point. And so those 2 weeks before allowed me to cancel all client meetings, face-to-face meetings, for protection to my business, but protection for them as well. Not that, I certainly haven't been ill or anything, but I think it's just more a responsible thing to do. And then really got planning on what I thought was probably going to happen. And certainly with the demographics we are working with, we have a huge variety of very mature organisations that have been going for years, that are very well set up from infrastructures. They have very good infrastructures in place, for example, business continuity planning. And then the very small companies that are quite disorganised and probably wouldn't have the full list of all the emergency contact details for staff in place. And so before we even started on the HR piece, I created a community with all my clients, and all clients that I'd worked with that needed the help, but also clients that had just probably a small service from us. We invited everybody into this group, as well as other companies that I knew needed help, and also local companies, and also friends that had businesses. So we had a huge kind of swell of companies with over 80 businesses on these emails, and started with just setting the scene in terms of what was coming. So we started with business continuity planning, and we gave them frameworks and standard documentation to fill out really quickly if they didn't have them in place already. We talked to them about getting up-to-date emergency contact details for everybody, making sure everyone was aware of locations. And because mainly all our clients have the HR software system, it allowed us to really work that really, really well in terms of accessing data for them and helping them support and contact people. The standard HR support, which went from crisis management to restaurants that we work with, just completely in meltdown about how does this, what is actually happening. That was prior to the furlough scheme coming out. And so there was lots of panic activity that happened that first week. So trying to help them with that. And then we went through unpicking furlough. It's not a concept we're used to here. It's the US employment law. So I can remember that first weekend, I think I had 3 or 4 hours sleep, trying to unpick and do as much research on furlough as I could, because the government were always lagging behind in terms of their websites. There's a 3 to 4 to 5 day lag on things they would announce, and then they would tell you what they mean 5 days later.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help businesses, because it was very fast paced, fast moving, as we all know. So there's lots of research done during those first 2-3 weeks. And we started with the first week of regular Zooms. So an employment lawyer that I partner with It's been fantastic. So we have, it was twice a week. We'd have employment law updates, keeping everyone up to date on what they should be doing. Then we moved to the week, and now it's fortnightly. And providing them with all the relevant documentation. The furlough letters, there was nothing at all on websites, so we created our own, and we got signed off legally. Health and safety advice, occupational health. So we partner with a company that provides Oc Health, and so we commissioned a workshop for her to deliver, to deliver that to our clients, which was around 3-4 weeks before the return to work, in terms of returning safely and the risk assessments that needed to be used, and dealing with employees that were concerned about coming back to work and making sure everyone's safe, etc. So what we've tried to do is think ahead as much as possible and do some future back thinking, in terms of, we know what's going to hit next week, a month later, we know what's going to hit in September. And so we've created our products and services and documentation and the Zooms around getting them prepared, rather than hitting them with something today for something they have to do tomorrow. And that will be things like redundancies. We have done work on how to plan for a redundancy. Do you need to make a redundancy, and how to plan for and structured meetings, etc. We've been delivering those for the Chamber of Commerce as well across the East Midlands, and other organisations as well. And things like, we know there's going to be a rush on those requesting flexible working, and that they want to work from home, and that's a very easy process, but it's going to be really difficult, especially if it's worked well and the employer doesn't want the employee to remain at home. And so that's going to be really challenging, and there's legally just 7 business reasons why you can reject a request, and it's going to be quite challenging. So we've done workshops around unpicking that and helping them through those various things. And other Zooms on, so many Zooms, honestly, on managing remote workforces, managing remote workforces for the first time, Zooms on how to work Zooms, because everyone's been kind of thrusted into working from home. Everybody's very tech savvy. So that's been a little bit of a blocker. How to communicate with staff, how to bring people back from furlough, how to flexi furlough, and all of the different things that have come sort of in between as well. So it's been quite intense, but very quite fascinating in how it's evolved, and how our clients have been so supportive to their teams and really compassionate. We've had, I would say, probably 3 types of scenarios with clients. So those that have thrived and are thriving, which is fantastic, and recruiting. Those that have almost like a hybrid model, where some are at home, furloughed, and they've got a core team are working all hours to give the business legs again. And then those that are struggling just because the market isn't there. So hospitality, for example, recruitment agencies. So it's been really difficult to see them work so hard over the years, and for this to happen to them. So it's been very humbling and quite upsetting at points, when you can see how it's affecting them and their families. We've had employees that have been ill. We've had employees that have lost, obviously, family members, as a lot of people have, and we've had some employees that have died as well, sadly. And so our support has been everything from celebrating with those doing well, recruiting, and helping them move into this very exciting space, which has just opened up just because of COVID, and those that are supporting grieving colleagues because they've lost a member of staff very, very quickly without, it was just so quick. And I guess our support is very, very diverse. We're we don't know what phone call we're getting next, you know, and I think that is the great thing about the HR role. It's almost, you know, I would say anybody in the whole world doing HR right now, I would put us not at the front, but I think we're definitely a bit of an emergency service in terms of trying to get businesses to survive and keep going and giving them the right advice at the right time. And I think one thing to say, which is really challenging with all of this, is very early on, it was really clear that employment law would not be relaxed whatsoever. And so you would forgive a company making the wrong move, and especially if they haven't got HR support, you'd forgive them for probably not going through a process in the right way, or not listening to somebody's request to work from home and managing that process, or just saying no rather than going through the statutory route, which they should do. And so it's quite challenging to know that there are so many companies out there that have probably done things not in the right way, but if the employee feels aggrieved enough, you know, that will go further, and they will be held to account, and there's no flexibility and there's no leeway, and employment tribunals will apply, and that, I fear, post this next 2-3 months, I think then a no win no fee legal support, the cap that's now taken off the tribunals since 2 years now, so anybody can apply for a tribunal, and you don't have to pay anymore. You used to pay up until 2 years ago, you had to pay to submit your complaint. Well, you don't anymore, and I think there will be lots of aggrieved employees after this process, but the pressure on employers to do so much right in such a short time when their business is at risk, the health and safety they've had to go through, closing the business or keeping half of it open, and the social distancing now, and the compliance and the legal fees and the investment they've had to put into infrastructure, tech for working from home, all of those things. And then on top of that, a huge tsunami of HR challenges that you wouldn't normally get in a 10-year lifespan. You know, they've had everything thrown for them to deal with. And so we just hope that, you know, there's limited damage coming out of this from a litigation point of view. But that is quite scary to know that employment law won't be relaxed.
So it's lovely to hear the support you have given to these businesses through this very difficult time. I think that's very inspiring. Fantastic work. On perhaps a lighter note, before we finish, is there any particular success stories you'd like to tell us a little bit about? Anything of note?
Yeah, I'll probably shorten this. I know we've gone slightly over, but probably one of my favourite clients, actually. And this was whilst I was still in the corporate world. They said to me, but 12 years ago, you know, can you create a handbook and a contract for us, which I did. And they at that point were there was the two co-founders, two founders, and the Black Labrador around their kitchen table, which is where most businesses start, don't they? Right, around a kitchen table. Yeah. And now that business is 120 staff, 130
wow.
actually.
That's amazing.
Working across probably about staff, so employees in about 10 different countries, and a product distribution network in, I would say, a good 70-80 plus, as it's a global business now. And I work with them now on site prior to COVID, hand in hand as part of the management team, probably about 4 to 5 days a month. And so this business is fantastic. They mostly listen, but we've done some great work with them over the years, and they're very receptive to listening to what we think they need. It's a fantastic culture, and it's a real privilege to work with them and support them. So it's, there's always some ups and downs in terms of, no business is perfect. There's always a few fallouts in terms of staff not quite fitting, or probably sometimes managers saying the wrong thing, but essentially this business is the kind of business we just love working with, because they are so spot on when it comes to leadership. Fantastic leader, and they've grown the business without ego. They've grown the business with compassion and humility for staff, and they're very generous as a business. And I don't mean financially, I mean generous with how they work with staff. They're kind and supportive, and to see that kind of ethos, which genuinely comes from the heart, this isn't a kind of a fictitious leadership style, this is genuine, is just so nice to see how this business over the years has developed and evolved into a company that people just love working for. The engagement surveys we've done, they say they've never worked for such a great business. Again, it's not perfect, but the core essence of the company is employee first, and you see that play out literally with all the decisions that are made. For example, COVID-19, they are in a sector that was doing very well. So they are in the hobby sector, and everyone wants to create games at home, and so their sales were just going through the roof, and it was an opportunity to, I guess, capitalize commercially, and that would have been great. But the business owner decided no, he didn't want to do that. He wanted all staff to go home, and he wanted them all to be on furlough, and he wanted them all to be safe, and therefore the business would close that day. And I think that those kind of decisions for me are the reasons I just love doing what I do and working with these types of businesses. And through COVID, it's been quite a not that they had to reveal much more in terms of how they work and their culture and who they are as people, but I think for me, I feel so privileged to work with these businesses, because COVID has really shown true colours. And I think certainly business leaders under pressure, who were very scared about what's going to happen next, who probably have their houses mortgaged in the business, for example, lots of financial investment, personal financial investment, making decisions about people first and not financial decisions first, was just so humbling and so in moments quite emotional, quite overwhelming, because I can't be prouder to work for these companies. I can't be prouder to work for them, and their employees working with them are very lucky indeed. And even today, decisions made on a call where, we don't have to do this, but we want to do this. And every step of the way, they've made the right decisions over and above what any other company probably could, who cared less about the teams, probably would do. So, I feel quite privileged to support these companies, because I know for me, and Dave, you know me well enough as well, is that values are aligned, and where values are aligned, great things happen, and it's really powerful, and you feel as though you're in the right place, you're working in the right place when that happens. So I guess to kind of finish that off, it's very much about values. And I think certainly from a selection point of view, for those listening, go right back to work with somebody who really is aligned with your values.
That's a wonderful story, really good. Thank you very much for sharing that. So thank you very much, Rebecca. For me, our discussions have been truly inspirational and enlightening. If the listeners would like to make contact with you and your business, how would they go about that?
Yeah, so just reach out. So we have our website, which is www.myhrhub.co.uk. hr.co.uk. And my HR club is the same, .co.uk as well. We're very open to receiving any emails. That's email, it would be hello@myhrhub.co.uk. You can Google us or find us on LinkedIn. My name is Rebecca Bull, my HR Hub, and that will be on the LinkedIn. Or you can ask Dave if you want to connect with Dave if you're not already. Just reach out to us, and we're more than happy to have a chat with you anytime, give you some advice, or obviously if you're interested in helping you, that's absolutely fine. But if you've got a question around purchasing HR services, or you want some advice, or indeed within our network, we know a lot of HR consultants in the UK. So if you wanted to have a little bit of a chat on what we know in terms of guiding you to the right decision, then please feel free to get in touch. So thank you for listening anyway.
It's been really good, really good. I really do appreciate all the time you've given to us. It's been really informative. So I wish you certainly all the best. We'll obviously be in contact in the not too distant future, I hope. And thank you for sharing for some really good information and stories with everybody here. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. You're very welcome. I've really enjoyed chatting again to you, and thank you so much for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And everybody, just remember, save money and buy smart. Goodbye.